Look, Nigel Farage, he was speaking out last night. Take a listen to what he had to say.
When you're engaged in something like that, you can never, ever guarantee that what you say is 100% true. You may think it's true at the time. You may ask a question whether it's true. Now, Starmer, by cracking down on that, poses, I think, the biggest threat to free speech we've seen in our history. And Elon Musk has caught wind of this. You see, I think the reason Musk has been going for Starmer over the last week is he knows what the reaction is going to be.
Tough talk in there from Nigel Farage. You agree with it, Matt?
I do, actually. I do agree with Nigel Farage in the sense that I think what we've seen after the riots and protests and what we're going to see in the months and years ahead under the Labour government is a concerted attempt to undermine free speech, free expression in this country. Some of the things that have come out already over the last week I find absolutely remarkable. I actually wrote about them this morning. You know, tech companies being forced to monitor legal but harmful speech on social media. Children being taught about fake news and misinformation. I've got some questions. Who defines what is fake news? Who defines what is misinformation? Because it wasn't that long ago Keir Starmer and others were telling us that the vote for Brexit was based on misinformation. I mean, I'm concerned about this attempt to restrict the public square. Coming down hard on people who incite violence and murder, got no issue with that at all. Coming down on people for expressing unfashionable, unpopular views and opinions. Well, if you want to inflame a people, if you want to get them angry and resentful, you want to get them to backlash, that's the way to do it. Because I think we're looking more and more like a sort of crazy tin pot dictatorship than a serious, representative, liberal democracy that's confident in its ideas and its people.
Is that fair?
This is not about clamping down on free speech, but there are some really serious concerns about the social media companies. You know, under the Ofcom overview of TV companies, Michelle, if Matthew and I come on this show and say something that is demonstrably false, you have a duty to intervene and correct us. There is no such compulsion on social media, and I think that's a real cause for concern. And when you see someone like Musk, who's, you know, made X a sewer compared to what it was before he took over. Well, he's allowed a whole range of people putting forward fake news, conspiracy theories that I think is a real cause for concern. And Matthew, when you talk about, you know, the teaching of fake news, what Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, was talking about was critical thinking, you know, reasoning, questioning received assumptions. I'm sure in your courses at Kent University, you've got such components about critical thinking, and it's absolutely right. It's the way you enable young people to spot lies, to spot fake news. And the other thing is it's really good for your employability skills.
Why am I suspicious of Bridget Phillipson and Labour on free speech? Could it be because they just dumped the Higher Education Free Speech Act with no debate? They just quietly got rid of it with no discussion.
Because it was performative.
No, it wasn't. It was about... I work in universities, Bill.
Yeah,
I helped design that legislation. It was about protecting and preserving free speech. What it meant was, if people like Kathleen Stock were sacked from their job in a university, that university could be fined for violating free speech. Now, Labour's got rid of it. Let's move back to this question about...
Hold on, before you move on, the 1980s, there is free speech legislation in place that Margaret Thatcher brought in, and every university should be upholding that. You don't need new legislation.
Yeah, the problem is, as anybody who's seen the cases in recent years, Kathleen Stock, Eric Kaufman, Noah Carl, Jordan Peterson, I could go on and on and on, Joe Phoenix, Helen Joyce, I can keep going all day long, is universities aren't reforming themselves. We need to work to protect free speech. But back to the issue at hand, the problem I have here...
Can I just ask, Matt, do you concede that actually people with that have views that other people may disagree with, that they have been deplatformed, universities and stuff?
Oh, God, yeah. Look,
so you do.
Read some of the stuff I've written, the lectures I've given. I'm a passionate defender of free speech, but you don't need new legislation.
Well, let's agree to disagree. One of the issues that we've got on the left of politics, I would argue, is they've embraced this identity politics, woke worldview. And the problem with that, before everybody kind of says, oh, well, what does this mean with this word woke? Let's be clear. Left-wing movements now view minorities as sacred. You can't challenge minorities, you can't criticise minorities. And so what people on the left do is they erode free speech and free expression on the altar of social justice because they want to protect minorities against what they call emotional harm. So what happens is, as we're seeing now with the Labour Party, they're going to expand the definition of Islamophobia. So you won't really be able to criticise Islam. You won't be able to ask meaningful questions about the role of Islam within Western societies. They're already expanding terms like far-right to discredit and delegitimise millions of ordinary people. They're now saying they're going to clamp down on legal but harmful speech on social media. That is insane. That is something that I would expect North Korea to do, not a modern representative liberal democracy. And they're also making it clear that they're going to be using a much tougher stance with law and order, criminality, to go after children in some cases for voicing these unfashionable views. I don't think that's on. I don't think this is what the British people want.
Well, I'm going to let Bill Rammell respond to that.
The problem with Matthew is he takes some things that are said by the worst excesses of the far left and then represents them as the mainstream within this Labour government. It's not true. However, you went on to
bring in legal but harmful laws.
Legal but harmful.
So
and I said it. No, I said it earlier. It's been floated out there. I will be very surprised if ultimately that comes into legislation.
Do you think it should do?
No, because it's the point I made earlier. The only line you can draw is violence and advocacy of violence. Anything else in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable is impossible to enforce.
Yeah, I just don't want to see speech curtailed that is not illegal. We have something, you know, the common law, English common law, which the legislation that I suspect Labour will end up bringing forward directly conflicts with that. That if it's not banned, if it's not illegal, it should not be prohibited. But anyway. I
saw someone write on Twitter at the weekend, someone that I know, they said when they're typing stuff now, they panic. I think, is this going to get me arrested? And loads of people were replying, were going, well, don't be racist and don't be this and don't be that and you won't get arrested.
Sounds like the Soviet Union.
And I thought, what is this kind of... But then I thought, actually, perhaps that is the plan. To make people, if you don't conform to a certain viewpoint in society, to get you uneasy, to make you on edge, so that you're kind of not perhaps writing things that other people wish that you weren't. Obviously, I'm not talking about inciting racial hatred, etc. Look, Trevor Phillips, he's come under a bit of criticism for something that he wrote. Matt Goodwin, tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, this is a piece by Trevor Phillips in the Sunday Times. I sort of, to be honest, think it's not Trevor's greatest piece. He's very dismissive of the people who are protesting about the issues around migration and multiculturalism over the last week or two. He suggests they should be sent to Rwanda. He kind of... He
calls them ignorant, racist, thickers and sickers, illiterates, mix of football hooligans, born teens.
And the thing is, I've known Trevor for a long time, so I sort of know there's a version of Trevor that doesn't really think this. But I think what he's doing is what a lot of Liberal commentators routinely do, which is give a signal to other Liberal commentators that, hey, I'm not really like these guys, I'm going to clamp down on all of these guys. I think he could have written something more nuanced, and this is what's frustrating me about the national debate over the last week. We could have had some really interesting, reflective comment pieces and long essays that really did pull the curtain back and say, OK, what is this about? And instead, I don't know about you, Bill, but I looked at the newspapers this week and I thought, wow, they're either scared of intervening in this debate, they don't want this debate to happen, or people aren't willing to come forward and say, actually, I don't think this is just about far-right thuggery. I think there's something deeper going on in Britain. Compare with BLM, compare with the 2011 rise. I remember the Guardian writers in 2011 falling over themselves to say, this is about austerity, this is public sector cuts, this is about what the Tory government have done. This time around, it's like cricket.
Well, I was surprised by Trevor. I mean, Trevor's someone who's got a history of standing up against what you might describe as the orthodox race relations industry. So I was surprised by it. However, there was a kernel of truth within it. As I've looked at some of these court cases, a lot of the people, limited education, limited intellect, a lot of them with drug and alcohol problems.
How do you know their intellect?
That's what their actual barristers have put forward on their behalf in the court. And the point I'm making is, they weren't far-right protesters. They were sucked along in the protest. It still means they're culpable and you have to take action against them. But I've got more sympathy for those people than those who were actually doing it from a genuine far-right perspective.
Yeah, but you say you've got sympathy for those people because before you even knew who those people were, I mean, you're describing them now because they've been charged and you're talking about things that their defence barrister has said. even before all of those things were known about people, the blanket label, I've got to say, of far-right thuggery, that was deployed instantly and consistently by the government. And many, 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 many people still to this day will have issues with that.
But Michelle, the riots were organised by the far right.
They
were organised by...
Just 2 seconds. How do you know?
Go online, look at the posts from people like Tommy Robinson,
Hold on,
Lawrence
because
Fox, and
the other day, the fella
people.
from Hope Not Hate, and remember, everyone, they're supposed to be the good guys and all this. Apparently, they wrote back and said, one of them put a tweet up and said that the list of 100 planned protests was a hoax.